All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining our animation alumni panel. We're going to get started right now, and I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Josh. I'm the Assistant Director of Career Development here at CCA, and I'll pass it to you, Patricia.
Hi, everybody. I know some of you. I'm Patricia Kavanaugh, and I am one of the animation faculty members, and I'm also your events coordinator. So those of you who came to Animation Week last year, that was me that put those together, and trying to do similar sort of events all year this year. So you'll be getting lots of annoying emails from me.
Cool. And now we're going to pass it to our esteemed panelists. And how about we start with you, Carl Edward?
All righty. Thanks, Josh. Howdy, everybody. My name is Carl Edward. Me trying to read off the thing I wrote for myself. Thanks for having me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Carl Edward Mongan. I go by Carl Edward. I graduated from the animation program spring of 2020. At CCA, I gravitated towards storyboarding. I utilized classes that I thought would benefit this interest, like acting for animation, visual storytelling, 3D character acting, script writing, gesture drawing, anything that had storytelling at its core. Now I work at Nickelodeon in the SpongeBob universe, currently on Camp Coral as a storyboard revisionist. I'm passionate about telling stories. I've been celebrating Halloween since July, and I once ate 81 Ghirardelli chocolate squares in under an hour, contracting severe pancreatitis. And that's me. I'm excited to hear your questions.
That is a very awesome factoid. I didn't know you could eat that much chocolate in an hour.
Me neither.
All right, Mr. Kennedy, I will let you introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is James Edward Kennedy Jr. I go by Mr. Kennedy. I'm a graduate of CCA's Animation Department, class of 2017. We're currently working at Leica in the Facial Animation Department. We do with Rapid Prototype, currently working on Wildwood. Really excited to be asked to be on this panel and to see some of the professors that have helped me get to where I am right now, and look forward to having questions from you guys.
Great. And last but not least, we have our final panelist, Hojin, if you'll introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hojin. I use they, them pronouns. Well, I was working at Late Night Cartoons as a character designer, currently kind of on hiatus. I graduated May 2020 from CCA, and right now I'm trying to focus more on the 2D animation aspect. Before Late Night Cartoons, I was doing rotoscope animation for Middle Mountain. That's about it. Yeah, I mostly specialize in character design and character animation, some storyboarding thrown in, but mostly the technical animation part. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to kick off the first question, and feel free to just jump in. Whoever has got an answer, you can all answer. You could just one person answer, however you're feeling. And just to, in case you didn't hear, everybody who's here, all our guests, feel free to throw questions into the chat. I'll be kind of keeping an eye on it. So, I'll try to intermix those. We'll definitely leave time at the end as well. So first question, what was your job or internship search like? How many places did you apply to, and how long did that process take you? Anybody want to jump in first?
Yeah, I'll jump in. So I didn't technically look out for internships. I really tried to network with individuals to understand point of interest, as well as to ask academic questions that would benefit the overall structure of my plan. I reached out to a gentleman here named Brian McLean, who's the director of Rapid Prototype. As soon as I got to CCA, I chose CCA because CCA is where technically the Rapid Prototype department started at Leica. So Brian McLean was working at CCA in the RP department, and I kind of looked at the trajectory of what he was doing. And then that same year when I started, I actually met David Vandervoort and Anna, who's the recruiter here. And I basically started a conversation with them to kind of understand how I could take every energy that I had at the school at the time in order to apply it towards Leica. And pretty much got a instant feedback via LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been my network of choice. So I'll do LinkedIn, and then I'll go out and actually meet people in person, or I will volunteer at like the Glass animation event, where I get to meet more people from an international standpoint. So for me, internships were key, but I didn't see myself being available to do internships just because I have a family, and I have to provide and do responsibilities. But I would say if you have an opportunity to do an internship, to take full advantage of that. And another thing that you should do is actually take notes on everything you do. That actually is your receipts for interactions that you had. And you can always rely on those receipts to kind of help establish a conversation. Like I said, I actually reached out to Brian McLean back in 2015, continued to apply to Leica over the span of 4 years, 2 years after I graduated as well. And it was through Brian that I got the opportunity to come into Leica. And then once I was here in this department, I've actually been able to then pivot and go into storyboard training on Wildwood. So I would say probably I've applied to, I would say 30 jobs over the span of 5 years. But out of those 30 jobs, I always stayed true to wanting to enter into features rather than go the TV route.
Great, thank you. Hojin or Carl, did you want to weigh in at all with your experiences and how your search went and how long it took you?
Yes, but I'm muted. I had been applying to internships like since I got to CCA freshman year, regardless of whether or not I was going to get it. I felt like it was good experience to just apply and get rejected and see, keep figuring out your portfolio that way. Mr. Kennedy highlights an excellent point in that most jobs that you're going to get are through individual folks and connections that you make through there. I got very lucky. I applied to the Nickelodeon artist program after applying to every internship for every season until I graduated. And they liked what the sample that I had sent from my senior project, Temple of the Mime. And so they brought me in, and very, very lucky, 2,500 plus applicants. And we were one of 5. So it's like super random. Most internships are like that in terms of like stakes. So be excited and put your heart and soul out there, but also be aware that those chances, there's a large pool there. I got offered an internship while I was at CCA from a nonprofit that started up at Berkeley called Offie Health. They had just started making pediatric videos to explain illnesses to children. And so that was something that I was able to be a part of. Rick sent out an email, Rick Vertoli, about the gig. We were encouraged to apply. So that was also super exciting because that gave me some experience. It wasn't exactly, professional pipeline experience that I could take entirely into my next job, but it was experience, and they liked seeing that I was able to work in a collaborative space. So my advice on that end is, if you can't get an internship, if you can't get that trainee thing, do your own projects. If you have the opportunity to work with other people and build that collaborative base, because not only is networking with people who are currently in the industry extremely important, your peers are like peak exactly what you want. Those people around you are going to be your connections forever. So use them. That's my
I'm so glad that you said that, Carl, because I feel like I am a broken record and say that to every one of my classes. And I'm like, please listen to me. It's true. So thank you, because I think they'll listen to you.
That's why I like to repeat it, because I remember hearing it so often in class. and it just doesn't hit you until, you know, you're having that one-on-one contact with people, or you get the opportunity. Like, I just started working at Nickelodeon, and they'll already send me emails of, hey, do you know someone who could fit this position? We will give us referrals. So it happens so fast. And so you want to be nice to people.
Yeah, I second that.
Hojin, did you want to say anything about your experience?
Yeah, I mean, like Carl said, I also applied to internships just regardless of like I think probably starting sophomore year or just whenever I could, I applied. Didn't get into any. My first job, I was graduating in May, and so I was thinking, okay, I should probably start applying. I think I was starting to apply in March. So there were just a lot of gigs that there's a lot of there's a spreadsheet with like the jobs like that's updated worldwide like every day. I use that a lot. I checked it like every day. I still check it. Yeah, I used a lot of LinkedIn for a lot of freelance gigs were on there, though be careful. And some of them has easy apply, so I was just applying left and right. And then in about September, but around July, I got a reply back from a place I'd applied, I think like sort of like pandemic period starting. So it was a couple months later, I did a test. And then I got the gig for a year. That one, I'm not quite sure why I got it. Because I'd never done rotoscope animation, and I didn't know anyone from there. It was all the way in Texas. But anyway, I think it was a lot to do with I remember just applying to like crazy to a lot of places and I think the pandemic and your circumstances always kind of sometimes line up and sometimes they don't. And there's always good timing and stuff, but one of the only ways to have good timing is just to be ready, I guess. And I don't know how ready I was, but I was still kind of working on my portfolio, and there was that senior film I did and put some effort into, and then just having that, and then having applied to like, I think it was over like 25 places or so, I'm not quite sure. And then I think it just, yeah, and then someone's attention was caught because I think the founders of Minnow Mountain, they were more from independent film, sort of more so background, so their style and aesthetics lean more towards there, and that's kind of where my portfolio was leaning, I think, and that's why I might have caught their attention. So yeah, I would say just be ready and polish your portfolio as you keep applying to jobs. Don't stop doing that. Yeah.
Josh, could we just throw in that portfolio question from
Yeah,
chat real quick?
actually, I was going to say that is an
Yeah.
amazingly coincidental segue into the first
Yeah.
question in the chat. It is a two-part portfolio question. First part is your portfolio specialized in terms of style, production role, etc.? And then the second one is a little bit more of an overarching question of what kind of portfolio advice would you give to recent grads? And not to pick on anybody, but let's go with Carl Edward.
Thank you. Also, yes, heads up, I do go by Carl Edward. Just to let you know, I know I've gone by Carl in the past, but that's my name. Okay, so
Sorry.
yes,
That was
no,
me.
you're
Sorry.
totally fine. It's a mouthful, a lot of letters, I promise, I know. My portfolio is specialized, especially for storyboard artists, as yours should be. If you want to do multiple things, if you want to, there are multiple production roles that you want to be a part of, have different tabs on your website for them, keep everything as clear and, readable as possible. So if you're setting your portfolio for a storyboard position, if they open it, they don't want to be seeing character designs, at least not right off the bat. You know what I mean? Maybe if there's character designs included for the specific story, and that's at the bottom included in one of those like gallery view click through things, sure. But always keep things separated in tabs if you want to be doing multiple things. I am just a storyboard artist primarily. So I have my storyboard tab. My work is geared toward television animation. So be aware of whether you're applying to feature television animation. That's a very distinct difference as well. And so that would be a conversation that we can have if someone has a question about that. But also by Studio Network, basically the way that I was posting things, and I've been told by multiple people different things, of course, I was posting things that I liked and weren't necessarily in, I'm going to send my website in the chat because Hojin made a good point to send my website in the chat. I don't know where I was going with that.
You were talking about specializing your work for television.
Great. Perfect. Thank you. A lot of people were like, oh, if you want to be on the show, make something in the style or sample of the show. I did one of those for Big City Greens, and honestly got an interview with them, and then it didn't pan out because I was a senior in college. But after that, I was like, I'm just going to make samples for things that I want samples for, you know, things that I'd like to see, because people are going to be hiring you based off of your, one, your skill, and two, your voice. So I wanted to make sure my voice was coming through. So I kept it in the realm of TV boards of action comedy, right? But I made sure to plug my voice in. So you can be super specific if you're like, damn, I really want to work on The Simpsons, you know, for something like so long running, you have the opportunity to do that. I've seen a bunch of portfolios, people who applied to the Nick Artist program who have samples of, like, they took a script or a sample script from a show and boarded it out. Sometimes it works, you know what I mean? So just board what you want to board, or draw what you want to draw. But again, keep things separate. As for portfolio advice, keep polishing it. I know it can get rough when you have just graduated and you don't want to be working on things. Take that break, honestly. I took like a 6-month hiatus after graduating. So don't stress yourself out over it. It is a marathon. So be aware of that. Be a cross-country runner. Don't sprint.
Wise words. Hojin, what are your thoughts?
Well, I've been sort of sorry, before before I go on, I have like a crazy amount of sites just because I had like an illustration thing, but it's this one for animation. Anyway, I have mine. There's a lot of tabs on mine. And I think with portfolio generally, how I approach it is sort of, I think for a long time, or not a long time, but I would think like, okay, I need to look at this, and then I make a storyboard, put it on it. I haven't done like a comedy storyboard. I should probably make one for my portfolio. Those things never pan out for me. That can be different for everyone, but for me, I found what works for me is that if I'm practicing something, or if I just feel like doing something in my own time, or just I do feel like I have to practice something, and then I have a drive to do it, and then I finish it and I look at it, I'm like, I can put this in my reel or in my portfolio, and it just kind of happens. And I think that kind of stops me from lying to myself about what I want to do, because I think for some time I was like, I want to be a storyboard artist. But the more I was doing, the thing I was doing more and enjoying more was the actual animation part. And then that kind of stops you from lying to yourself about what you might actually want to do. If you keep making things that you like, and then it kind of just fits your portfolio, or you're like, okay, I made this body of stuff. This just happens to fit in more of this category. I think my mind is trying to tell me something. And then it just sort of happens sometimes, but I know like that's different for everyone. Like some people really do need the goal of, I need to make this, this, and this for my portfolio. And I think it's more of like, you need to figure out what works for you. In terms of style and how precise you get in style, my style is kind of all over the place. I just put everything. I skew towards anime style, but I want to show I can do a variety. So I just put in a variety of things. The main thing is I keep it organized and keep it separate. So if I'm applying for a character design thing instead of an animation thing, I send them my page for character design, so they don't have to go looking for it, even if it's like just on the website in a tab. So keep portfolio organized is what I would say, yeah, and make what you like.
Great. Mr. Kennedy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I would agree on all points spoken. My style of putting together a portfolio is I do it seasonally. So I'll have a seasonal, like right now I'm doing autumn. So anything that I'm doing right now, I just post, and then I'll actually archive those, and then keep that as far as like a resource, sort of like it's like um, instead of having to get ready, you can always be ready in that sense. But what I try to do is I try to just make as much personal work as possible. But what I try to convey in the majority of my work is cinematic quality. So I want to show that I understand film overall. That's one thing that I feel like I bring to the team, at least I've been told I bring to the team, is the fact that I understand film. I've watched plenty of films. I've seen the shift between different genres and blurring the lines pretty easily. What I would say is whatever portfolio you're working on, make sure that it's you in the moment, and take notes. I can't stress that enough. Take notes of what you feel at that time when you're drawing. So like when you're doing like the warm-ups, kind of write down what day it is, temperature is, what it feels like. These are all sensual things. One thing I would say, especially to do, is pay attention to what it smells like around you, because that's going to be the key to bringing back imagery really quickly. For me, if I'm like having to work on a project really quickly, most of my stuff is personal projects for my portfolio. That's what I'll showcase. But what I'll do is I'll actually keep something that reminds me of that time when I felt like I was most creative. And I'll look at that or I'll smell that, even though it might not have a scent. And that allows me to just be back in that space of nostalgia where I can actually produce without feeling like I'm trying to reinvent the wheel. When you, as far as websites are concerned, like I said, I do mine pretty much seasonally, my portfolio, and then I'll archive it. So it'll be up for 4 months and then I'll pull it down. I don't share all my work online just because it's a method of keeping some tools in your toolbox before you show everybody. You can save that stuff for when you actually have that in-person meeting. That'll be like a bonus showcase. But at the same time, it's really great to acknowledge that everything doesn't have to be digital. I would say that if you're working digitally, that should be like your last step, because when we're doing story here, it's more or less what can you put in the paper right in this moment. You can't, crop, or you can't shift pieces around. They want to see how your brain is actually processing the moment without any kind of tricks, like eye blink or something like that, to kind of sell it. Really what it is about feeling, clarity and feeling, but the feeling should be first. And that's why I say about the nostalgia aspect of kind of trying to recreate that space that you're in at that moment. And as you travel like throughout San Francisco, go to the Presidio if it's available, go down to the Mission, go down to the Dog Patch, and really observe everything, draw everything that you see, and draw it in your style. Don't worry about if it doesn't look a certain way, or if it doesn't feel a certain way to someone else's work. If it feels right to you, then it's right. Because when it's showtime and you're asked to produce in front of someone, you can just get into that rhythm really easily and not feel like you have to have a reference in order to do it. Your reference is really like your memory. Your eyes are the lens and your brain is the memory, or the film in that sense. But everything that I do is really cinematic because I want to stay in features. I love watching, television, but features is where I want to be, because when you look at the end of the day, especially from my standpoint, you're working on a project for 4 to 5 years. It gives you an opportunity to kind of really build that community around you and understand sensibilities of others. And that way you don't have to continue to kind of repeat that process from one show to the next show. But I have no experience in TV, so that's just my personal opinion. But I would say definitely portfolio wise, do digital and analog, and keep yourself very very clear in clarity, as well as that feeling that's in there.
Really quick before we go to the next question, I do want to say thank you very much for saying the point about regularly updating your portfolio. Because a lot of times when I like talk with students and go into animation and film classes, sometimes I will be showing examples of good websites and portfolios. Can't tell you how many times like the last time it looks like the person updated the work was like 2017 or 2018. That's like 4 years ago, people. Like a lot of stuff happens. So you don't got to do it every month or anything, but just, try to do it semi-regularly, like Mr. Kennedy was saying, because you guys are doing a ton of great stuff.
Yeah, also really quick, anything that you think is like garbage and you want to throw away, keep that, take a photo of it, because you can always add that into your work and you'll find stuff like, oh, I didn't know that line quality on that was like this, or I really like the way that I did like this one piece of the drawing that you can incorporate it digitally, but having that analog aspect, it really helps you kind of not have to recreate work all the time. You just create work and collage it together. That's a really powerful way of giving feeling and texture to your work without feeling like you have to start from the blank page every single day. Oh, and figure drawing. Got to do figure drawing and draw over your drawings and figure drawing. Don't be precious with them because that idea is already there. It just needs to be innovated upon.
Thank you. Charlie's got a question in the chat. And this is a good question because I think there's a lot of pressure on students to land an industry job straight out of school. And sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes you have to just take something to pay the bills. So I don't know if that was an experience for any of you where you just took something that was not related to animation at all or art in any sense. So Charlie's question is, will taking on a non-art job be a good choice after graduation if you don't have existing offers? Will this break your momentum?
If you go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry. That's very difficult to answer because for me it was right after the pandemic. It was the pandemic happening. So I'm lucky enough that my family was like, all right, you're done with school, just come here and stay and eat food. So health-wise it was better. I probably would have stayed in the Bay Area or gone to LA or just not taken such a drastic move if it had been non-pandemic. And I think feeding yourself is very important if you're not lucky enough to have family who will support you that way. So I don't really know about that because my family has always been very supportive. I think the main choice would be to I think just have a project going, regardless of how big it is. Just have something that you enjoy doing on the side that's art related, because it is something you want to do as for a living because you love it. Yeah, I think just keeping something up is fine, and always taking classes is really nice because this was during school when I had work studies happening and etc. and classes happening, and I took a course online. It was summer for school, and I think that helps a lot, even if it doesn't have to be a ton of class, and it doesn't even have to be a live class or anything. It could just be videos you watch or courses you watch. Again, I think it's very different circumstances for each person. So you have to decide sort of on what's your mileage with how much you can work and how much you can keep your creative side.
Okay, thank you.
I feel like good choice is a difficult way to phrase it. I mean, if you don't have the ability to, like Hojin mentioned, to have family or someone who can look after you kind of a thing, then it may be the only option. I moved back to LA and it was the only option. And I was, again, I'm not one to do a job that I don't necessarily like per se. I wound up at Blick Art Materials, but it was only after a lot of me like finding odd jobs. So like Craigslist, random one-off, things to do just to make money and keep myself entertained. So I think it can be a very solid choice and a smart choice if you don't have anything lined up to find a job elsewhere, even if it's part-time and you can just pay the bills and have, time to work on something. Will it break your momentum? That is completely up to you. For me, it did. And I honestly needed it to, because I had been throwing my whole world into building a portfolio and making art. And suddenly when my identity was tied strictly to art and it was pandemic, I was like, oh God, I need to do some soul searching because I don't feel like a person right now. But it's totally up to you. Virtually, it's way easier now to like hop on a Discord, make a Discord, join your friends to be able to hold each other accountable artistically. If you have the drive, you'll make it work. And if you lose the drive, like I did, you'll have friends who will hopefully, encourage you to get back up. Social media was huge for me to be able to see people are still making art. They just graduated. I just graduated. I should roll out of bed and make something. You know what I mean? Even if it's not a portfolio piece, you're making something. I was just drawing Doug Dimmadome with a huge hat for like days after, I was like depressed on my futon. So yes, I do think finding a non-art job if you don't have anything lined up after college is a solid choice.
Yeah. Sorry. Just to yeah, about how you draw little things. Yeah, I mean, I was on a rut in after school. I was very bad space mentally, etc. I was just drawing anime fan art, a lot of Lupin fan art. That's it. Like that's it.
Really quick, Mr. Kennedy, before you answer, Hojin, that's actually a good point that's going to come up in a question early in a few moments regarding fan art. So hold on to that thought. But in the meantime, Mr. Kennedy, your thoughts.
Yeah, I would say the same. You got to kind of weigh the odds on yourself. Craig Good is one of my professors. I have a Pixar book that I carry around. I get everybody to sign, and I asked him to sign it, and he signed it. Failure is an option, and I didn't know what that meant when I first saw it, but after leaving CCA in 2017, I had no opportunities at all. I moved to Texas where my family is, and basically utilized that time to kind of live and take those ideas that I had and go out and see how I could produce them as if I was like my own studio. But at the same time, I was constantly reminding myself that failure is an option. I had personally thought that I would be in the industry as soon as I got out of school, and it was a failure because that didn't happen. But it's an option, you know. So what I continued to do was basically, I got a 9-to-5 job. I worked for a company called Herman Miller. I know your parents probably know about Herman Miller. Very expensive stuff. But what that allowed me to do was actually take all that energy creatively and move it into a 3-dimensional space. So I began doing set dressing for Herman Miller at various locations and basically maneuvered that around, but still kept the premise of stories that I wanted to tell. But it was something tangible that I could actually touch, that I could actually move around, that I could actually add to my catalog of understanding. But what I would say to students and recent graduates is, there's a 24 hours in a day. And if you work a job for 8 hours a day, you still have a lot of time. Still have time to sleep. You still have breaks, like hour break, half an hour break. Just keep, a notebook with you to write down ideas, take notes. That's my takeaway from this whole lecture is, take notes on everything you do, because this is the way in which your brain is going to be able to process your ideas more clearly, without feeling like, well, what was I thinking about then? Oh, I remember that time. It's just a lot easier if you have a reference to pinpoint back to. I have notes from Patricia's class that I still keep. I have notes from Valerie's class that I still keep, because in her class, I was interested in facial animation, even though there's not a job technically for that. where you just focus on faces. But here at Leica, that's what we do. We focus on 3D faces. We also do bodies, but the face is the department that I work in, you know, and that prep work, note-wise, having the syllabuses, and then actually being able to contact professors and continue that conversation on a peer level now allowed me to kind of keep that mindset without feeling like, oh, well, now I just work a 9-to-5 job. This is my life now. No, this is just a segment of my life to lead to the next point. So I would say invest in yourself, make your own choice, but remember that it's an option that you have, whether or not you continue to be an artist or you just relax for a little while and not be an artist.
On the taking notes point, I just want to interject something real quick. I would say also take notes on like software that you use at a job, because I keep all that stuff. I keep all those notebooks because you finish up a project, you may not work for that company for like another year, and your brain is not going to remember. Like every company has their own little way of doing something, right? Their own like workflow. So hold on to those notes too, you know, per job, because you will want them to reference back. So I see a lot of head nodding, so you guys agree, I think. Carl Edward agrees. Cool.
Well, so we're going to take a pivot away from some of the technicalities of animation and portfolios and things like that. Joyce sent me a message, and we're going to real quickly talk about every introvert's worst nightmare, which is networking. So her question is, I wanted to know what are some ways to network with people in the animation industry as a student. Hojin, you have your head in your hands. It looks like you got some good answers keyed up for this one.
No, I don't have any. Networking is important. Don't be me. Because I think the pandemic came and it was and I really just applied for everything, and then I didn't know these people, and then it happened. But before that, some of the things I did was there was Glass Animation. So if there's a festival or a convention, that kind of does the first step of gathering people who want to talk with you, because everyone likes animation in that space. Therefore, they will want to talk with you, so you don't have to be too nervous about it. So, and there's a great energy in festivals and conventions. Everyone's excited. And if you volunteer there, then you're with the volunteers and you can, you know, complain about stuff and then laugh about stuff that happened. So, you know, the great things, if you're part of an event, and especially if you're behind the scenes in it too. I use LinkedIn a lot, not for networking. I use it a lot for job search and stuff, but there's been a lot of people that who've just found me on LinkedIn, and that takes away the big trouble of, oh man, do I introduce myself? Because sometimes I'm like, I kind of know this person, and it is much easier for me to send a connection rather than go up to them and say hi, because right now I can't do that, and I don't want to do that, but you have to. And like social media has a lot of recruiters on there sometimes, and like indie creators will be like, hey, what are you, I'm making like a pilot project, I want some freelance people. And so the people you organically make a conversation with on social media, because that's a different sphere than LinkedIn for how you network, because some people are just there to have fun, and some people are there to network, and some people want to do both, and you don't know if they want to do one or the other, and you don't want to, you know, be like, hey, I want a job, or, you know, things like that. So, you know, I heard this phrase about crap, no, I forgot it. Okay.
Okay, we're just recording this, no worries.
Okay, that's it. I wish I could talk more about physical sort of one-on-one connection, etc., things like that, which I did in a film festival setting, and also talking with your teachers, because like I've been in contact with Tim, because every time there's something that happens or a test happens and I'm like, I don't know, So I messaged him and say, is this real? Is this company real? Am I being conned or something? So it's nice to get to know your professors and just have a connection with them, just so that later down the road, they'll understand why you are bugging with them with questions, because they'll understand why you are the way you are, because they've had you in class and you've talked with them on like a bit more of a personal level. But yeah, I don't think I said a lot of advice, but yeah, utilize LinkedIn, make sure you know the boundaries of people on social media, do festivals and conventions. The energy really helps. And there's parties. So if you're into that, good. That's it.
Networking, take a deep breath, because everyone is a person, and you will often forget that because you think they have, I mean, technically recruiters have some sort of, you know, power over you, but they're just people. The more you treat them like people, the more networking you can get done. And I want to say networking, I think the term I understood networking as when I was at CCA is different from how I understand it now, because going to CTN for the first time, meeting those artists it felt transactional, because that was how I was approaching it. And I know that's how a lot of younger artists approach it, you know, they get a little nervous. And so it's not necessarily about making a connection with a person. It's about, oh, congratulations, I love your work. I'm going to butter you up. This is how networking works. What can you do for me? Very transactional. Networking is transactional because, again, there is someone who has a level of authority over someone else in terms of jobs and roles. That's the part that you forget about, because you're both aware of that. You know what I mean? If you're reaching out to an artist who you admire a lot and is in the industry and you're a student, they know you want my job, right? Kind of a thing. And that's a connection. That's where you take it and go, and now I'm trying to learn. I'm not trying to supplant you. I'm not trying to get something from you so immediate. I'm trying to understand what your role is, and I'm trying to figure out to hone in into what I want. So I take networking as an opportunity not to show up and go, hi, I'm me, hire me, which if you have the work to do it, go ahead. But as students, more often than not, it's, hi, I'm me. Who are you? What is this thing that you do? I have so many questions. You don't even know the questions you don't even know yet. You know what I mean? You can't even begin to fathom the questions you'll be asking. So just take the opportunity to learn from folks. And again, I will mention this until the day I die, through years of improv and Tracy and everything else, take a deep breath, because I often forget to breathe constantly, chronically. I'm asthmatic. So just take a stop, take a deep breath, and then your brain will start to function a little bit more properly again. And I think breathing is my best advice on networking. Virtually, there's a million ways to do it. In person, we'll get back to that point, and honestly, it'll probably be easier. And think about it this way: we're awkward and introverted the way it is. The pandemic has only made things worse, so you really don't have to worry about being the only one who feels awkward and introverted. And then virtually, find people's emails. When it comes to networking and you want a specific role, position, you want to be in someone else's shoes, look, if you're into TV animation, go through TV credits, go through film credits, see who worked on it, reach out to them. LinkedIn is the professional network for when you don't know somebody. You know what I mean? Often artists are a lot of times on Twitter or Instagram, and they don't mind a DM. Just make sure it's short, sweet, and you aren't, again, being transactional with them. They're usually more than happy to help you. That's my advice for now.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it any better. Networking, it is a challenge. I'm an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert about things that I know. Like my method of actually trying to network is I study people's work and understand like where their work might have progressed and changed, and where they might have just thrown out their whole portfolio and restarted and come back brand new and fresh. But the goal is always to understand their viewpoint. One thing that I did before I started at CCA was I did 2 summer sessions at Cal Arts. And the reason I chose to do that is because I wanted to go to Cal Arts, but I wanted to feel out what it was like, the environment. Teddy Newton told me about CCA when I was at CGRAPH. And that's how I learned about CCA. But when I was at Cal Arts, what I did was I looked at everyone's student films, every single one of them. I went through the end credits of films. I wrote down who worked on this section of story or this section in layout, and basically then looked for their work, their previous work. And then from there, what I was able to do was then approach them via LinkedIn with questions that was in their language. So it's almost like an approach where if you're going to go have a dish of some type of food, right? So you want to know the ingredients that are in the food. That way you can actually, comment about it and say, oh, wow, I really enjoyed, the radish in this, or I really like the way that you made the puree on this. But the goal is to really look, analyze, see yourself at their position, use their position of where they were at in their art, and then be able to ask questions that build on that, because they still might have questions. And that's where the notes come into place. I saw that, like, for instance, right now, these are all like layout people that worked on, I think this is Soul or either Luca, but these are people in story, so what I'll do is I'll write their name down, and then I'll look at and find their work, and then kind of reverse engineer it and see if I have commonalities between it. It's nothing wrong with that, but it's wrong if you spend X amount of time trying to find out about this person, and then you find that their style is not your style. You don't kind of mesh together. You have nothing to add on to their process. But networking is key, but network from a standpoint of that you're a student all the time. Even though I'm in the industry now, I still network as if I'm a student, because there are things that I don't understand. I'm still new to this. And people want to talk about their job. They want to express their passion for it, because they can sense that you are taking the time to understand their passion. So it's sort of like reading a book or going to a good restaurant. You want to make sure that you understand what you're stepping into before you get through it. It's a process, it's a relationship, and it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take probably, a couple years, a couple months. For me, it took, 5 years worth of, hey, how's it going? I see that you guys are doing ABC on this. I see that you guys are using this new printer. I understand this printer, I understand how this could actually add to Bi-Spoke animation. Did you use Bi-Spoke animation on the box trolls for Snatcher? It's sort of just knowing the industry, but still being inquisitive about it without seeming like that you're trying to do a checklist on if they know about this, if they know about that. You're not bragging. You're actually trying to engage on a genuine level. So that's what networking is. You can network with me, you can reach out to me, feel free. But there's a way in which you have to, there's an etiquette to it. That's the best way to put it. There's an etiquette.
Oh, the etiquette part. Yeah, what I was saying about in social media, especially figuring out boundaries, but also like when you said your analogy, I remembered what I was going to say. So thank you.
Thank you. Networking.
The analogy I think that kind of helps calm my nerves on networking, especially in person, because that's when I think we all feel very vulnerable, is like, don't approach networking like you're hunting, but that you're gardening. And so just kind of inviting people to your garden, and then other people invite you to their garden. You got things to show, they got things to show. It's not like a hunting game sort of thing. You're just growing each other's stuff and trying to tell each other, hey, yeah, that's how I grow my thing. So.
Oh, one more thing. This is something that Christoph taught me when I was taking his class. Don't be afraid to go outside of what you know. Experimental animation is key to unlocking so much. Like, I have these vivid ideas now thanks to his class, because he freed me from thinking like, oh, it's got to be this way, it's got to look this way. I'm like, well, it's whatever I feel now. If I want to paint with spaghetti and then draw on crayon over it and then take a photo of that and then manipulate that digitally, it just freed me up. And taking his class allowed me to be able to talk to more people on an international basis. There are a lot of people from Global in Studio, which is in France here at Leica, you know, and there's people from all over the world, you know. It just prepares you for the unexpected, you know, but be willing to engage in that unexpected collaboration without feeling as if, oh, I don't feel comfortable here, I'm just gonna kind of pull back. That's when you feel uncomfortable, that means that you're working on something grand and great rather than being safe. And that's one thing I would say with networking. As long as you're not, you know, hunting, which is a good term, you know, people will be willing to share with you rather than feeling like, oh, well, I don't know you, you know, what do you want, you know? So definitely say that. Don't get in your own way.
Did everybody see Craig's post in the chat? I heard Billy Wilder at an event where he said, don't copy other people's movies, make the movies that other people copy. I like that. So we've got about just under 10 minutes left. Josh, shall we do another one of our questions? Shall we open it up to our group if anyone has some more questions?
Yeah, sure. We'll open it up and we'll just close it with one of our questions. So free for all. Who's got a question?
Yeah.
Who feels brave to unmute themselves and forever be on a Zoom video recording?
Come on.
Don't
Or you
all
can
ask at once.
or you
though.
can put it in the chat too. It's fine if you don't want to speak up if you're shy, or you can keep your camera off, or however you want to do it.
So I just wondering, so hi, hello everybody, and just Kate then. Just wondering for the freelancing stuff, and I also have the question in the chat, but probably just too many questions. So my question is, what's your suggestion of doing freelancing works, and what are something you want to avoid of doing freelancing work? Something like that's pretty broad, but yeah.
Anyone want to take a stab at that? Have any of you done like some little freelance gigs?
I haven't done any personal freelance, so I really can't speak on that.
That's all right.
Get it in writing, I think, is very important when it comes to freelancing. I've done a couple things for friends of friends that, you know, was an email chain that they disappear after I do like a good chunk of work for them. So make sure there's a contract drafted. Valerie is the one who instilled that thought in that portfolio of animation class. So if you haven't taken that class, do take it if you get the chance. Make sure you definitely have things in writing. Make a contract. It's not that hard to find online, just like a template one. I'm sure Josh has some, you know, references or materials that he can send you about that. Or you can message your favorite artists if you know that they do freelance and go, hey, what does your contract look like? Look, networking. And just make sure that you have that. If you get paid a little bit before and then like half before, half after kind of a thing, just figure out what works for you. It's really up to you. You're freelancing, you know what I mean? Know how much you can make before you have to start filing taxes. Freelancing is a whole business on its own that doesn't get a lot of light because I think we do talk about it again briefly, but ask your professors. I think that's a longer conversation that could be had. That's all I have to say for now, but if you have more, please reach out.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, freelance, that's yeah, get it in writing. And be very yeah, I mean, they're one of the freelance things I did, they didn't take the taxes out or anything like that, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take out 30% of it. So, you know, just already thinking ahead and being like, okay, I need to put that away. And also being like good contact with them and with people, with clients you freelance with, and then like tell them when you're available again, because you never know, like they might be a reference for you later, they might have more work for you just like a month away. So yeah, I would say keep in touch with them.
Yeah,
I would
I've got
say,
one.
oh, sorry, you can go first.
I've got one thing that I wanted to bring up. I think it was last week or the week before, but there was a conference called View Conference that was in Italy, and Patrick Osborne, who directed Feast and directed Pearl, and is working on some feature work right now. He gave a great talk. I think you can access that through View's website. It's the View Conference. It happens in Italy. But he spoke about how he gets approached about projects and the fact that he will spend 20 minutes on the project only at the beginning because he's not sure if things will line up as far as ideas. So instead of investing, well, I'm going to spend a week to focus on this project, and then it turns out, well, I really don't enjoy this project. That's a week that you've already spent, but this is just paraphrasing his talk, but I would highly recommend that. His name's Patrick Osborne. He was at Disney. He did Feast, and then he was at Google Stories. He left Disney, went to Google Stories, but he spoke about having a nest egg in the, available, because there will be periods where you get a green light on a project, but then it takes a year for it to be launched. So that year you'll have time to kind of work on the project, but you still have to eat as a whole. That's one reason why I never did freelancing, was the fact that, I have a family, I have responsibilities, and I need to kind of figure out that aspect of how bills are going to be paid. And that goes back to like the question was asked earlier about having a 9-to-5 job, or, will that, stymie your creative ambition.
Really quickly before we get ready to wrap up, I wanted to touch upon Carl Edwards' point and Hojin's about contracts. If you guys ever get like a stranger danger feeling from somebody about a project that feels sketchy, you present them a contract, and then you will see how serious they are about it. So never be afraid to pull that one out to see if they're really serious about it and if they'll pay you guys for it. It's super, super important for you guys to do that.
Can I say one last thing?
Yes.
Super briefly. When it comes to just thinking about things as they come up in my head, when it comes to like pricing yourself for freelance, unless they're giving you like a really good offer right off the bat, make sure you know how much your time is worth. Make sure you're thinking about materials, softwares, if you're paying for softwares, how much that costs you, how long you're working for, and then put that, if you want to, into an hourly rate. That's what I do to test those waters. If you don't have that right off the bat when someone proposes something for you, while you're doing your homework assignments, time yourself, see how long it takes. You know what I mean? There's a good indication of, oh, a character turnaround takes me, 8x hours. That can be 8 times, whatever you want your hourly rate to be. Please don't think negatively of yourself. So rate yourself higher than you think you deserve to be paid, because I guarantee you deserve to be paid that rate that you don't think you deserve. And then one day you're just going to start getting paid that rate, and you're gonna be like, oh shit, I could have been doing that. You know what I mean? So if you want to talk more about it, and if any of you have any questions after this besides that, I'm sure we're all more than happy for you to reach out on LinkedIn. I'll send my social media in the chat. I always say that I'm an open resource to everybody at CCA, and then nobody messages me. So do it. You know what I mean? It's up to you. But I'm putting myself out there. I'm more than happy to respond.
Carl Edward wants to network, guys. Take advantage of it. Okay, so we are just over the 8 o'clock hour. So I do want to thank our panelists for staying on for just a couple more moments. We have one last question for you guys. So currently, excluding the CCA staff and faculty that are here, there's 40 plus folks that are where you guys once were. As they near the finish line and start to join where you guys are, what sort of like last minute pointers and advice would you give them as they begin their own search to find a job or an internship? No pressure. Hojin, you're first.
Apply everywhere. I went crazy applying everywhere. At first I was like, why do this? But then it got easier. The more you apply, the more you're just like, okay, I can do this. I can keep doing this because I just kept applying and that's etc. And yeah, and I think also another important thing is like I guess it's always a thing my dad told me, but and it's gotten just more particular during the pandemic about how he was like, oh, you're, and I view art the same way too, in that it's how you, it's like a communication tool. And so currently I'm struggling to fill it with something because I've been inside a lot with not a lot of experiences. So even if you don't have a job like I didn't for like months afterwards, there are other things that kind of you need to fill yourself with so that you have a story to tell or you want to express a feeling. And those things are very important too. Like, I don't know, I guess mostly it's like enjoy yourself and eat that hot dog that you think you shouldn't eat because that taste was so good that you made a storyboard out of it and you made a song with it too. You just never know. You need something to fill your art with. It's just a tool to communicate. So you need to want to have something to communicate. Yeah.
So I would say, what was the question again? I'm sorry.
No worries. So, what sort of quick pointers / advice would you give to the students here as they're, wrapping up their CCA journey and they're about to become professionals?
Yeah, I would say first thing is learn to brand yourself. Like my brand is Mr. Kennedy. And like, why you call yourself Mr. Kennedy? And I'm like, because that's my first name, But but branding yourself allows you to have. It doesn't have to be big, just small enough where people can recognize it. It's almost like you are a logo, and your style is a particular element of that logo. So, for instance, like a lot of people think I tell horror stories only, which I do. I like horror stories, but I'm an environmentalist at the same time. But I also can do rom-com. So it's good to kind of have a branding where people say, oh, well, this is the person I can go to get this from, or this is the person I can go to that knows this person I can get this from. It's a way of which goes back to that networking, but it's about really channeling in your skill sets that you're really strong at and allowing people to see that consistency of it over time. That's one thing that I would probably tell students to really push when it comes time to graduate, or if you've already graduated. Create a branding socially, that is consistent with the way in which you operate with your artwork without feeling like, well, I'm going to shift this way. I'm going to shift this way, sort of like what talking about earlier, where you feel like you're lying to yourself, because you want to do this and you want to do that, but your talents are really in one spot. So finding that talent and then marketing it to a degree that you're comfortable with, so when you do meet people at these festivals, you can hand out your card, you can talk about what you do, and then they can immediately look at your site and say, okay, well, this is exactly what they were talking about, rather than having something that's total left wing,
I'm going to piggyback off of literally both of you because those were excellent points and I couldn't have put it any better. Live your life. I say this to every student who asks me what they should be doing that isn't art related. Just live your life. Go outside, sniff grass. You know what I mean? Like just be present in the moment and find something to fill your artwork with. There's a botanical garden right next to me where I go constantly now and I exercise. I would have never done that before the pandemic, believe me. Also, be super kind to yourself. I don't know how many people tell you that, but you're going to graduate. And at least I felt kind of bad for not having the role that I wanted immediately. And you just have to be really, really patient with yourself, kind to yourself. Imagine if one of your friends graduated and was like, you know what, I suck. I didn't get the one job that I applied to in this major studio, and I have, haven't had any other experience. Would you let them talk bad about themselves? I don't think you would. So don't let yourself do it. You are your own parent at this point. You have to act like it. Honestly, that might be it. I swear to God, I had something else. Feel free to reach out. We can have a
Network with Carl
conversation.
Edward. He will finish the rest of his clue with you guys.
Piggyback off what Carl said about piggybacking off of what both of us said. There's a God, and I just forgot. What was it? Oh, before I remember again. I think one of the good things to know, the thing that helped me when I didn't have a job after school was I had my sister to look at. So she graduated, she applied to like over 100 places, to the extent that she didn't remember anywhere to some places. Okay, and then she took a job. She graduated from a science background thing, magic, something I don't understand. And then she got a job as like sort of a teacher's assistant at a preschool. She had fun with that. And she wouldn't have had that experience without, just kind of mulling about and calling my mom and being like, I'm still unemployed. But it's like seeing how my sister was like, I applied to over 100 places, and I'm like, well, I have just applied to just 30 plus. I can still get there. And what Carl said about being kind to yourself, it's really good to think about it in terms of how you would talk to your friends, because when you see it that way, you're just like, I would not be like that to my friends. I don't want to say bad things. We're also still in a pandemic. So yeah, that's another thing.
All right. Well, thank you very much to all of you guys for showing up, for Mr. Kennedy, Hojin, Carl Edward. Before we wrap up, I do want to give a shout out to some other people. Patricia, thank you very much for being a good collaborator on this.
Yeah. Thank you
Valerie
for
and
having me.
Tim, you guys were awesome getting this going as well. And Artie, who is our new career development guy, he's here. He's monitoring some of the chat stuff as well. And thank you to all of you students for tuning into this. This is you guys probably might not be thinking about how important this is right now. So you can actually ask for the video if you want. You can watch back later if you'd like. But while you guys are here, like, connect with your teachers, connect with all of your friends. Like, I don't want to go back into it because it's an introvert's nightmare, but network, connect with them. They will become the people you guys lean on when you guys look for your jobs and your careers. And, reach out to us in career development. We're here to help you guys with all of these kind of things to make them seem less scary.
Yeah. Before we go, I forgot to mention someone who was really instrumental in my development at CCA, and his name is John Hayes. I don't know if he's on here or not, but if you have an opportunity to reach out to John Hayes, you will gain so much information about the industry from a standpoint of decades that it's priceless. And anytime someone asks me about, people at CCA, I always mention Craig Good, George Evelyn, John Hayes, and Christoph, Valerie, and Patricia, because they all really took time to talk with Rick when Rick was there to understand how to develop students for the economy that we are living in right now. So I just had to say that since we were being recorded.
It's forever on the record.
Yeah.
All right. It was so nice to meet Hojin and Carl Edward. I'm sorry I never got to have you in one of my classes, but
Me too.
yeah.
You guys
We
can
have
come back
this
and do an
now.
extension or get an MFA.
Yes, yeah.
Artist in
Um,
residence.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank
Well,
you, everybody.
Thank you. And to the people who asked questions that we didn't get to, I apologize, but you guys can certainly follow up with all of our panelists, and I'm sure they would love to talk with you guys more about this. And we will try to do this again next semester, hopefully, and maybe see what kind of new stuff people have to say. So with that being said, thank you again to everybody. Sorry we kept you guys a little bit late, but you guys are free to go back to the wilds of the internet from which you came.
Have a great night.
Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Right. Thank you.
Bye.
So long.